Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Telescope Show.
What's up, everybody? Everyone in this place, if you could do a handstand, I want to see your feet up in the air right now.
Hello, and welcome to the Telescope Show, where we discover God through geek culture. Matthew Seipel Anderson, your host, here with you. Well, this is episode 70, and we are talking about Raya and the Last Dragon. But first, let's get into some news. Black Widow is set to release July 9th, we think, anyway. And it's going to be in theaters and on Disney Plus with Premier Access. So that's pretty exciting. Speaking of Raya and the Last Dragon, that's the same way. It's on Disney Plus with Premier Access. But we actually found that it was available on for purchase on iTunes. So we're like, well, we can either pay $25 to stream it, or $29 rather, or we can just buy it. So yeah, we just bought it. Anyway, moving on to some more news. Disney Plus has got a series called Kenobi. It's another one of their Star Wars shows about the famed Grandmaster Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi. So that's super exciting. I'm looking forward to that show. That is starting production in April. So I don't know when it's going to drop, but they are rolling camera, so that's super cool. May 4th, you're going to get some more Star Wars, The Bad Batch. It's an animated series, premieres on Disney Plus. That should be fun. And there's something that I'm very genuinely excited coming this September. William Shakespeare's The Avengers, the complete works. So here is the press release. What if the most epic cinematic franchise of all time had been penned by the greatest playwright of all time? Well, wonder no more. William Shakespeare's Avengers, the complete works, reimagines all 4 films as played by the Bard of Avon, complete with authentic meter and verse, stage directions, and entertaining Easter eggs. Fans will experience their favorite scenes, characters, and lines in new, yet fully faithful way through monologues and dialogues, with everyone from Captain America to Groot. 'Tis I. From the best-selling author of William Shakespeare's Star Wars, this book has all the wit, hilarity, and charm of the Star Wars series, but in a lavish new format, featuring a 2-column layout and dozens of full-color illustrations that capture all the iconic moments. More than just an entertaining read, this is an eminently giftable franchise Bible that elevates and celebrates the movies, making it a must-have for fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Avengers alike. Yeah, so it's going to be good. And what they meant by with all the wit of the Star Wars series is this author, Ian, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Doescher, Dossier, maybe, a little French. Anyway, this guy, he has made William Shakespeare's Star Wars, and I think he's done all the movies, and they're amazing. I've listened to 4 of them. They're not all available on the audio subscription service that I use, but they are super great. I loved them, and so I'm really excited that he's doing adaptations of the Avengers movies, so super cool. All right, well, let's get into our feature content. But actually, before we jump into the feature content, I want to mention that this episode of the show is not brought to you by Ibogo Shinai Samurai Practice Swords. Everybody loves watching a good sword fight. Maybe watching isn't good enough, though. Maybe you want to feel the thrill of battle for yourself. Well, it's your lucky day. The Telescope is totally not sponsored by Ibogo Shinai Samurai Practice Swords. So, here's the deal. I've joined the Amazon affiliate program, and a lot of people, what they do is they start a blog, about something they're interested in, like photography, and then they put these affiliate links on their blog, and people click the link, and if they buy something, even if it's not, what the link is, they buy something on that trip to Amazon, then the blog writer gets a little commission from it. It's like a little thank you from Amazon for sending traffic over. So I started one of these blogs, but instead of doing stuff that I'm interested in, which I probably will do some of that, But I decided it would be fun to do just completely random stuff and have fun with it on the show. So, yeah, today we are totally not brought to you by these Ibogo Shinai Samurai practice swords. And if you're curious about them, head over to thetelescopeshow.com and check out the blog. I've got a cute little article that I wrote. And yeah, you can click the link and help out the show. Click on the link and go buy some deodorant or something, and it will help me out. All right, Raya and the Last Dragon has earned like a 97% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is extraordinary. So I thought I'm going to look up what some of these reviewers are saying. So Roxanne Hedei says Raya and the Last Dragon almost feels like a throwback to the adventurer movies of old Disney, to films like Aladdin and Atlantis, The Lost Empire. It actually feels intended for kids, which is refreshing indeed. Amy Nicholson says, there's a darkness here that I think is lacking in a lot of modern Disney films, and I respect that its message isn't just believe in yourself. And one audience member, now these are like the professional reviewers, but on the audience side, Caesar P. wrote, boring and absurd love letter from Disney to China. He's an outlier. Most people love this movie. Tyler wrote, animation was great, along with the music, wonderful character development, and representation. Highly recommended. So, yeah, other reviewers have praised the way the film thoughtfully represents various Asian cultures, and by including many accurate details throughout. So, it was a gorgeous film, and as for me, I loved it. You know me, I'm not a very harsh critic, but this movie just worked for me. The classic Disney formula just hits the spot. It's like a classic Coca-Cola. Classic Disney, it makes you laugh, puts a tear in your eye, and it presents like a moral usually. There's like a moral or a truth, and they wrap the whole thing up with a bow, with a nice, happy Disney ending. So I don't want to say too much about the actual plot of this movie because I think it's going to take a while before a lot of people see it, being that theaters are still not open everywhere. But it was a gorgeous movie to watch. The backgrounds, the scenery, the water, it almost felt real to me. I was like, did they use real footage in this movie? It really looks like they did. So I actually did a little research, and I found a great article on IndieWire, which I'll put in the show notes. It says, here's a little quote from that article. The magic of animation continues to be the ability to explore ideas, characters, and worlds that don't exist. To me, Raya is the best example of hyper-realistic rendering, or the best example of the oh my goodness, I cannot read. Let's try that. Take 3. Raya is the best example of hyper-realistic rendering of images that almost feels like you're photographing a real landscape. So they didn't actually use real photography, but they made it look very real. So it's amazing. And the article is really interesting. It goes on to explain that Disney actually tapped some of their talent from the Marvel side of the company to bring Raya to life in a more live-action-like way than previous animated projects. So the movie's it's a pleasure to watch. And like I said, it's getting high marks for including culturally accurate details throughout. I should also give a shout out to James Newton Howard for writing a amazing lively score. I'm listening to it as I work on this. I should say I'm not really working on it now. I'm recording it. But as I was typing this up, I was digging the soundtrack to Raya and the Last Dragon. So the music shifts from familiar orchestra strings, the classic movie kind of soundtrack vibe, to bouncing rhythms infused with traditional Asian instruments and elements of modern electronic music. It actually reminds me a lot of the score for the Mandalorian series. How it's like it's like a hot dish. Up north we say hot dish. It's like a potluck. It's like a mishmash of old sounding, like odd old indigenous instruments, and then mixed in with like modern electronic stuff. So it's cool. Of course, there's a bubblegum pop song thrown in the lineup, but that's Disney. So what can you expect? Can't be too mad about that. So at the beginning of our talk about Raya and the Last Dragon, I quoted a movie critic, Amy Nicholson, who said, "There's a darkness here that I think is lacking in a lot of modern Disney films, and I respect that its message isn't just believe in yourself. Well, this comment really resonated with me. Yes, there is a darkness in this film. There are vicious fights, harsh conflicts, and all of it has very real consequences. And I should mention the fights. They were super. I mean, I can definitely see how they brought in someone from the Marvel live-action world to give their wisdom on how to make this come to life. And Raya and The Last Dragon nails it. I completely love the sword fights, right? And I love sword fights in general. You know, Robin Hood, Star Wars, even like movies like Princess Bride, there's that sword fight. I love that stuff. And Raya and The Last Dragon delivered some epic swordplay. It actually reminded me of Star Wars, like the Clone Wars and the Rebels cartoons. And I must say, there are a bunch of instances in this movie where pieces of fruit were flung through the air and then deftly sliced. And it seemed to me like it could very well be a shout out to the game Fruit Ninja. So yeah, thanks for that. That was awesome. That put a smile on my face. And so far, we've got dragons, swords, darkness, people dying. It's crazy. How do we look at this wonderful work of art and see God? Well, I think it's time to bring forth the telescope.
The telescope!
Now, there are many great lessons and morals that a person could draw from this movie. But where do I see Jesus in this movie? That's the question I started to ask myself, because it was hard to decide, which direction to go. There's this whole element of honor, there's an element of respect in this movie, and there's just so many things you could draw out of it. But I just asked the question, where do I see Jesus in this movie? And I see him first in Sisu the dragon, and next in Raya. And it's tricky to explain without spoiling the ending of the movie, but I think that Sisu is a picture of Jesus because she constantly calls to characters and calls them to look beyond the gritty real world, beyond the darkness. And Sisu says, trust, take the first step. In a way, she's saying that we should love our enemies as an act of faith. Jesus' disciples wanted Jesus to take political action. They wanted him to call fire down from heaven on their enemies at one point. What did Jesus do? He taught them to lift their eyes above all these things and to look to the kingdom of God. He told us to love our enemies and do good to those who hate us as an act of faith. So that's Sisu. Raya reminds me of Jesus because she eventually becomes this totally selfless person, and she hands over something very precious to her rival as an act of faith. And, this act, it changed everyone because it was so selfless. And it was a pivotal moment in the story. And the Bible says in Romans 5:8, but God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Today, maybe you think God's mad at you. Maybe you don't think you could trust God or that God would trust you. I want you to know that Jesus has already taken the first step towards you, right? It's just like in the movie. In this world where no one trusts each other, where there's conflict everywhere, it took that first step of selfless trust. And that's what God did for us. He came to earth, he experienced loneliness, heat, cold, loss, physical pain, emotional pain, and even death. Yet he did it while you were still far away, and he did it as an act of faith. So I want to encourage you today, take a new look at Jesus and consider making him part of your life. All right. Hey, that's the show today. Thanks so much for listening. Going to sign off. Can't wait to get back in the saddle and get another episode going for you. Looking forward today to watching the fourth installment of Falcon and Winter Soldier and thinking about doing a show on that. We'll see. All right. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
What's up, everybody?